Dystopia warning, obviously. Welcome back to General Election Watch Day 2094. Hey Rishi, doesn't matter how many times I say that it's day 2094 of the general election campaign, it doesn't make it true. For those of you that aren't political nerds, that aren't forced to watch what these bellends get up to every day, that's the invented tax figure that Rishi Sunak is repeating to the point of madness, despite it being debunked. Yeah, I've just got visions of him in the corner of number 10, you know, one of his like tight little hoodies like pulled up around his face, just repeating the line over and over again poshly. 2094, 2000, like concerned staff approaching him. Rishi mate, you're right, 2094. It's mental. Everything about this election campaign is mental. Anyway, find something to bite on. I'm going to tell you just a little bit about what's happened over the last couple of days. And just to prepare yourself, the first guy that I'm going to be talking about, his name is Dick Holden. Dick Holden. Dick Holden. You might remember me telling you the other day about this guy who's allegedly banging a Sun journalist because press freedom. Well, he's been in the news for different reasons. To give you a little bit of background on old Dick, that guy is the Tory party chairman, right? His responsibility is to oversee his party's election campaign, and can I just say, he's doing a brilliant job, isn't he? His former constituency is Northwest Durham, but he's parachuted himself into what is broadly considered to be a safe seat in Basildon and Billericay, right? 300 miles away at the final hour with a shortlist of one. Which, you know, in case you need to be reminded, isn't exactly democratic. In fact, the other Tory candidates are not happy with him at all. One referred to him as a disgrace to the Conservative Party. That takes some doing nowadays, doesn't it? And it's apparently a running joke amongst the other candidates that they hope that Labour take the seat. Now, I personally don't think there's any such thing as a safe Tory seat in this election. As we've seen from the by-elections, Labour have been overturning huge Tory majorities. The former candidate for Basildon and Billericay, who stood down, won with a majority of 20,000 in 2019. Now, what the Tories have done with this particular story, because Myra Hindley is doing their media training, in fact at this point I think she's running their campaign, is they managed to Streisand themselves. For those unfamiliar with the term, that's drawing attention to your own fuck up that people didn't really previously know about. And how did old Dickie boy do that? Well, John Craig of Sky News was tasked with asking him questions during a pool interview. A pool interview is when one journalist asks the questions and the outcome or the video, etc. is shared amongst all other journalists. And they had one very pressing question, which is, why did you parachute yourself undemocratically into a safe seat? I'll give you a little heads up. The full clip of this is enraging and I might have to make a few edits to it because he completely dodges the question 3 times and decides to focus on Emily Thornberry.
How can you justify yourself, chairman of the Conservative Party, being parachuted into a safe seat 300 miles or so from your old constituency, shortlist of one, not the normal 3 or more, just a day or so before nominations close? How do you answer the charge? It just looks like an appalling stitch-up, and you're part of a self-serving elite.
This interview is about Emily Thornberry's comments today, and when she admitted that it's going to be our children across the country who pay the polite price for Labour's decision to try and tax private schools if they get into office. It's quite clear to me that it's not just families who are going to be paying the price of £2,000 of extra taxes under the Labour Party, it's going to be our children with larger class sizes right across the country. That, I think, is a horrendous price to pay. Children's education in order to deliver on Labour's ideological obsession.
This is a pool interview, and other broadcasters have asked me to ask about your selection, and we want to ask about it as well. I come back to the question. It looks like a stitch-up. Chairman of the party, shortlist of one, just before nominations close. How is that not an appalling stitch-up and anti-democratic?
Emily Thornberry today has completely admitted that Labour's approach to taxing schools is going to mean larger class sizes for children right across the country, particularly in the state sector. Children are going to be paying the price for Labour's ideological obsession with over £2,000 extra on tax for their parents and larger class sizes for children. It's children and families who are going to pay the price under a Labour government.
So you can't justify the way you have been parachuted into Basildon and Billericay. You're not denying it's a stitch-up and it's anti-democratic.
I think the most telling bit is the bit at the end when John Craig eventually snaps and points out the ridiculousness of him not answering the question. And his response probably tells you a lot about how the Tory party have managed to get away with murder, literally, over the last 14 years.
You're not denying it's a stitch-up and it's anti-democratic.
Emily Thornberry today has admitted...
I'm going to stop you now. This is ridiculous. This is ridiculous. You said in an interview earlier this year you were bloody loyal to the North East. What happened to that?
John, I've already answered these questions.
No, you haven't.
I have.
When?
When I did a Channel 4 News interview last week.
Oh, right, it's one broadcaster, isn't it? Why is the Prime Minister hiding this weekend and not answering any media questions? Is that because of the fiasco over D-Day?
Mate, this is supposed to be a democracy, not North Korea. You don't get to decide what questions you're asked by journalists. And because this is the general election of memes, yeah, that's what we've become. And also, you know, as British people, we cope via two methods, don't we? Piss-taking and binge drinking. I have to say this is one of my favourites.
Who are Len Murray and Sir Geoffrey Howe?
Emily Thornberry.
What is the difference between a donkey and an ass?
Emily Thornberry.
What make of vehicle is the standard London bus?
Emily Thornberry.
In other news, Sunak was heckled by a GP. And his response to it probably won't be good for your anger levels. Rishi Sunak appeared at a Tory rally in Wiltshire, surrounded by members, when a female GP chipped in with extremely salient points, actually, focused specifically on government policies that stop patients being seen by GPs directly and instead moved on to primary care staff. She said the NHS is disintegrating. Here's a brief clip of some of her points.
The right track.
But the NHS is disintegrating. I am one of 2,500 GPs in this country who are currently unemployed due to your policies. What are you going to do about that? 37,000 GPs will not vote Conservative because of the constructive dismissal of general practice that is currently occurring.
That's fair enough, isn't it? But then in a scene that could have been lifted from The Office, a man in the crowd heckled her and said most GPs spend more time on holiday than in the surgery. Love. Pretty sexist, right? What do you think Sunak's response was? He laughed.
Most GPs spend more time on holiday than in surgery, love.
Oh, really? Is that so? You go to your surgery and you will find out how...
Then another guy said, you can't get an appointment, can you? He said this at a Tory rally. Who do you think has been in power for the last 14 years? You absolute helmet. Pretty ironic, isn't it, that Sunak promoted maths as one of his policies? Ironic because most of his supporters can't put two and two together. In other news, the D-Day controversy rumbles on, doesn't it? And bear in mind that we've not even seen the interview yet that he rushed home to film alongside finishing off the Conservative Party manifesto, which is being released tomorrow. I'm not expecting it to be that complex, actually, no. It's probably just the word 2094 repeated over and over again, you know, like Jack Torrance's typewriter. We're actually at a point where it's going so badly for the person trying to, or is he, win the election, that he was forced to deny that he's going to step down. But in Tory land, everything is like backwards world, so could be any day now, couldn't it? Talking of trying deliberately to not win the election, a clip from the New Statesman brilliant TV series popped up, which feels very fitting. It stars the late great, dearly loved hero of mine, Rick Mail, as Alan Bustard, talking about the Tories trying to lose an election.
What do you feel about a Tory victory? Well, it was an absolute disaster. I mean, our whole campaign was designed to lose, so we could put Labour back in and they could carry the can for the total collapse of the British economy. I mean, consider the facts. We destroyed the health service, we dismantled the state education system, and we demolished British industry. We hiked up the interest rates so that millions of traditional Tory voters could no longer afford to pay their mortgages. And on top of all that, we chose for Prime Minister a bank clerk with all the charisma of a contraflow system, and still Kinnock managed to avoid winning the election.
Now, it's not so much that the New Statesman was prophetic. It's more a case of brilliant satire highlighting a deeply broken political system in which history just repeats itself again and again. And unfortunately, with the terrifying rise of the far right in Europe, it's never been more plain to see that people never learn. Talking of the far right, this is what a Reform candidate had to say. The country would have been far better if the UK had taken Hitler up on his offer of neutrality instead of fighting the Nazis in World War II. Fuck me. He also said that women were the sponging gender and should be deprived of health care. Hardly surprising, is it, when Nigel Farage likes to knock around with the Tate brothers, facing charges of horrific crimes towards multiple women. And in today's edition of This Is Why Satire is Dead, a Tory candidate has quit after it was revealed that he'd taken inappropriate photos of children at a teen club event. I've made jokes about this. I've said, oh, he's sweating, isn't he? Like a Tory at an underage disco. And that comes off the back of a poll, which wasn't particularly representative, but gives a snapshot of intention, which said that this election could have an extremely low voter turnout, which is just brilliant, isn't it? That's how they win. To be honest with you, I'm surprised that it didn't help his chances, because I've been under the impression for a long time that being a sex offender is a fast-track route into the Conservative Party. Do you go to brothels? Tick. Do you like to get bang on the gag? Tick. Do you touch kids? Tick. Right, I'm going to leave you with something positive, because after that, God knows you probably need it. First off, we've got someone that isn't usually associated with a positive story. Reformed ham, Lee Anderson, otherwise known as Tyson Farage's soggy biscuit. He's a little bit of rough, isn't he? He's once again proven himself to be a gift to piss takers, because he posted a picture of himself in front of a sign saying Reform Street with "A picture paints 1,000 words" as the caption. What do you think that Twitter did? Within seconds, the guy was being roasted to within an inch of his life. Here's old McSturbs with Arsehole Avenue. Good choice. Monkey with a classic. Minge Lane. Michael kept it topical. P45 close. Glue provided one of my favourite ones by completely removing the sign and making him look like he was suspended in mid-air. Beautiful. But my absolute favourite and my winner was Mark Johnson with Nigel Farage. I can't finish that sentence. And whilst we're remaining on the topic of good news, Ed Davey, Lib Dem leader, continues to have the time of his life on the campaign trail. Here's a video of him enjoying himself at a theme park after announcing the Lib Dem manifesto. Didn't really think much of Ed Davey before this campaign, but he's provided some much needed lightness to the insanity. And it is insanity. And if I were you, I would prepare myself for it to get much, much worse. Because as I've said before, Rishi Sunak has completely lost control of the farm. Yeah. If they can't even run a campaign, you've probably got a pretty good idea about why the country around you is rubble and ruin, haven't you? And things like this are legitimately terrifying. 30% of 18 to 34-year-olds aren't even registered to vote. For the love of God, register and vote tactically to get them out. These people have got control of the nukes. I was going to say they couldn't even organise a gangbang in a brothel, but judging by their track record, that's literally probably the only thing they could organise. So yeah, until next time, my dear long-suffering listeners.